So I'm really pleased now to introduce our first speaker, who is Dianne Post. And Dianne Post is has been an attorney since 1980, working on the issues of violence and discrimination against women in the US and around the world, and is going to talk on WDI submission to the International Criminal Court regarding principles of gender persecution. So thank you so much, Dianne, and over to you.
Somehow I was blind copied on an email from the Madre Association or organization. It was an invitation to a May 15 seminar to learn about the new principles of gender persecution that the prosecutor from the International Criminal Court is developing. According to that particular email, civil society groups were asked to weigh in. Then the Madre group gave an example of their own letter and their resource guide that was totally focused on the rights of men who identify as women. They asked us all to sign on their letter, which of course I was not about to do. But it also said that groups could submit their own comments by November 22 of this year, just yesterday, to a certain email address. So I thought, well, what the heck, I can do that. So the irony did not escape me that Madre, which of course means mother, had as their global campaign officer a man who said he uses he, him pronouns. So I then did my research to find out what the principles were, what the prosecutor at the ICC was doing, and making sure that the time to submit and the place to submit were correct. What I found was that the policies already did exist, but now they want to update their gender persecution policy that has existed since 2022. So we're a few years late to the game, but better late than never. Using Article 7 of the Rome Treaty, they want to say nothing about sex and only talk about gender. Somehow they think, as lawyers, which amazes me, that sex discrimination principles are not enough to cover gender violence. So they just want to get rid of sex. So the 20-page submission that WDI submitted covers pretty much what you would expect and what you've heard before, which I'm not going to go into. We just talk about the overarching violence against women by men because they're women, the allegedly fundamental belief in the whole world in the equality in women's rights in society, and the failure to listen to women. I argued that removing sex violates international law, especially CEDAW. It violates the human rights of women and girls, silences women's voices, and reduces women to body parts. On a more legal basis, I argued that gender in these new policies is undefined and has an amorphous and ever-changing definition, so it is not suitable as a category of legal protection. Gender relies on the stereotypes in that society, what is expected of women in that society, so it is different all over the world. So there is no legal clarity, no international norm on what gender is. And how they define it is they use gender to define gender. Gender ideology is someone who thinks they're in gender ideology. Well, this, of course, takes us absolutely nowhere. Whereas sex is well defined and the same throughout the world. Sex as a class is sufficient to prosecute crimes based on what someone looks like or acts like or claims to be. It's simply, well, because you dress like this, we're going to beat you up. Well, that can be prosecuted on sex because normally one sex wears that outfit and this is a different one, so you can use sex discrimination. You don't need to have this other category and get rid of women. Women have to be protected as a category because of the history of violence and exclusion against us by men. Now, the principles of the ICC, the new ones, and the old ones, actually, they hint at the structural inequality that underlies the problem. They hint at it, but then they ignore it. So they know it's there, but they don't want to deal with it. Where gender is part of that structural inequality, as we know, that they are upholding by this move, not eliminating. They are supposing that gender roles, which are nothing but stereotypes, are in fact real. So then I lay out some legal problems with not having adequate definitions. For example, if this happened, you wouldn't be able to prosecute because of that. If that happened, you wouldn't have a case because of this. Evidence would be difficult to get, etc. So I also do mention briefly that the problem of gathering accurate data, if you don't have sex segregated data, you don't have accurate data regarding assaults, rapes, etc. So I, for one, have no illusion that this submission will change the minds of the committee. But What I hope is that there's at least one person on that committee who has some sense, and it will give that person something to argue with. They can argue more forcefully. They can say they are supporting the desires of these women all over the world, and you know how big we are and how many people signed the WDI statement. So it will, if there is someone on that committee who's got some sense, then it will help them to have an argument. And I also want the supporters of patriarchy to know that we are here. We are not going away. We have fought you for 5,000 years, and we will fight you until we win. Thank you.